With us this morning, State Senator Joe Pittman, brought to us this morning by Marcus and Mack, a law firm representing injured people on the day after the governor's budget address and with other concerns going on in the state capitol as well. Senator, good morning.
Todd, good morning.
I'm assuming that's where you still are because it's been a busy week.
Yes, yeah, and the weather has complicated things, but there's certainly still plenty to do.
Yeah, I would guess. So the governor with his budget address, which was released yesterday, speaking of weather cancellations and postponements, and obviously from your reaction in the public statement that you put out, this was not a good occasion for you. You did not like what the governor put out yesterday.
Well, I just don't think it's practical. I don't think it fits the current environment in our Commonwealth. We have to remember that the PI tax is often a tax borne by small businesses, the very small businesses that have been punished throughout this pandemic. And to put a tax on them really is adding insult to injury. And the hypocrisy that I see locally is here we are talking about the governor's carbon tax. And as we've discussed before, funding public education in the 41st district is directly tied to the property tax payments paid by these carbon-emitting power plants. And so I find it ironic that he is, so concerned about funding public education, but yet the students that I represent apparently aren't as important because he's, on the other hand, trying to unilaterally take away significant resources from their educational opportunities. And I can't buy it.
Well, there's the way that it attacks businesses. That will trickle down, of course, to the consumers. There's the consumers who are bringing home paychecks right now, and a 46% tax increase is really, really steep. Would you or do you see any sort of amenability among Republicans to say, let's increase the tax at all?
I don't. Absent an effort to eliminate the property tax, I don't. As you pointed out, I mean, we're dealing with dissuading people from earning money. Personal income tax is not just the money you earn, but also on your investment income. And I don't think we should be disincentivizing that effort to earn income. And I think that's a major mistake.
Part of the governor's budget address as well is an increase in state spending, which Republicans have never been in favor of either. The feeling that the state gets enough revenue, it's just how are you spending it? Your reaction to the governor, what was it? It was over 8%, wasn't it?
Approximately 8.2%. And we have to balance a budget. Our friends at the federal level do not. And so we have to make a decision on how we're going to live within our means. And every dollar we spend is a dollar that we have to raise from somewhere. Now, is the federal government going to be coming in with a broad-based stimulus effort to help state and local governments? I keep hearing that's a possibility, and maybe that falls into the equation. But even that is one-time revenue. I would assume that it would be a one-time revenue investment into the states. And so if we use those funds, we also have to be conscious about their limited lifespan. So that's part of it too. But yeah, we can't continue to pull money out of the wallets of hardworking women and men in the Commonwealth, and that's what this does.
Senator Joe Pittman on the line with us here this morning. A lot of the governor's budget address, of course, is trying to find new ways to find revenue, new sources of revenue in Pennsylvania to meet some of the state's expenses. But also, of course, he wants to expand spending. And whether you agree with that approach or not, what the governor proposes in this budget address, a lot of it is stuff that we've heard before. Severance taxes, taxing police or municipalities for police protection. The governor is bringing back some of his greatest hits here.
It is some of his greatest hits. And in fairness, the issue of the police protection, I mean, that is something that governors, Republican and Democrat, have continued to highlight. And I recognize that there's a challenge there in having the state police be able to service the Commonwealth in rural communities. But, at the same time, it goes back to who's paying the bill. The severance tax, I find those conversations to be ironic, not only the severance tax, but again, the carbon tax, because the only way you get money from those two sources is if you use the resource. We only get severance tax money if we drill and use natural gas. We only get carbon tax money if we emit carbon from power plants. So they're just an odd way of trying to figure out how to generate revenue when on one hand you say you want to limit their use, but on the other hand you want to tax their production. It just doesn't make sense.
As the budget process unfolded last year, it ended up being, with the pandemic, split into two different budgets. The one that was passed on time at the end of June, and then the one that came in November, which was basically, let's look at where we stand now after these 3 or 4 months of the summer and adjust our goals or find a way to get through to the next fiscal year. So that being the case, as you look at the new fiscal year and how this budget process will unfold here over the course of the next 4 months or so, what's your prediction? Are we going to be able to get a complete budget at the end of June? What do you think it looks like?
I believe we will, but I don't think it will be nearly as aggressive as what the governor has proposed. I just see very little appetite in the makeup of the legislature for that kind of proposal. Our economy is slowly rebounding in terms of the revenue coming into the Commonwealth. Let's pray that we don't have any more curtailment of business in the pandemic and that things open up even more over the next 4 months. So I'm hopeful that we're going to see some revenue come in through growth, number one. Number two, through whatever the federal government may do. And that'll be able to give us a reasonable product. And I guess, to your point, what surprises me is that we went through a budget cycle last year in both June and November that I found the governor to be very reasonable, very understanding of the environment and the situation and the need to provide stability. And so I have to admit I'm a little surprised that he took such an aggressive approach so soon after being pretty candidly reasonable whenever we just completed the last two elements of the current budget.
The connectivity of all of the different issues affecting Pennsylvania right now continues to just amaze me. And it probably shouldn't. I should be very, very used to it by now. But the pandemic, the vaccinations, and the way the state is distributing them, they'll have a direct reflection on revenue and on the businesses opening up in Pennsylvania. Are you satisfied, even after the hearing in the House yesterday, that the state is on the right track in terms of getting vaccinations into people's arms?
I'm not. In the Senate, there's a hearing today. I'm not on either committee, but the Aging and Youth and Human Services committees are holding a hearing on vaccinations today. I don't understand fully why the Department of Health has taken complete ownership of its distribution. I've talked to some medical experts, and in normal circumstances, vaccines are generally distributed directly to the providers of the vaccines. The government doesn't come in and ration them. Now, I get that we were trying to prioritize the individuals that are frontline workers and the most elderly to make sure they have the vaccinations. But the more I read and understand that, we're just not moving quick enough here in the state, and you see what other states have done. We have a logjam here, and it's not the federal government that's apparently the problem. It's right here within our own Department of Health.
They were talking yesterday with a number in the upper 30 percentile of Pennsylvania's effectiveness at the vaccine. The report came out last week that Pennsylvania, after a study by a private firm, was next to last in distribution and holding on to over 1 million doses. It distributed 800 some thousand and still had over 1 million doses that they had not gotten out of Harrisburg yet, or wherever the doses just are stored. And obviously that does indicate you're just not moving fast enough.
Right, and you see what happened in Philly there, where the city of Philadelphia basically got taken by a 22-year-old who sold them a bill of goods on how to effectively distribute the vaccine, and he ended up that not happening. I don't understand. I do understand, and I appreciate that many of these vaccines require double doses, and we have to be careful to make sure that people who get the first dose have the second dose in the queue. Otherwise, we've wasted the effort. But, surely there's a better way of maintaining that trajectory as vaccines come in over the period of time. But we've got to get it out the door so we can get some normalcy back into our lives.
Yeah, and that becomes an information thing as well, because now there are experts out there saying that first dosage is proving 91% effective, and you should get it into as many arms as possible and then wait for the second dose. And actually, by waiting longer than the 3 weeks, the second dose might be actually more effective. But at any rate, we have to find better ways to get these shots distributed. This should have been something that was in place from the very start.
I fully agree.
All right, Senator Pittman, we'll watch this budget process unfold over the course of the next 4 or 5 months. You'll be intimately involved in those negotiations, and we'll
buckle up and grab popcorn. So.
All right. Appreciate it. Hey, the beard looks good, too. You got the beard back.
Thank you. That's my trendy nature. Some days I have it, some days I don't.
Yeah, in your case, you could shave it off one day and it's back completely the next. It's pretty amazing.
A bit of miracle grow there. You're right.
Thanks, Senator. Appreciate it.
All right, we'll see you. Bye.
It is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS 101.1 FM and AM 1160.